Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the main event.
All right, let's get started. Again, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mike Price, and I'll be your host for today's fun session. Today we have Eileen Kent from Custom Keynotes and Earl from CTC Supply, an actual customer who almost lost his GSA contract not too long ago. And we're going to be talking with Earl, and we're going to be talking with Eileen, and most importantly, those of you who would like to ask a question, use the raise your hand icon on your panel, or type it in, and we'll be more than happy to address it. I'll try to handle both while I'm working diligently here. And let's get started. Today's agenda. I've already done all the introductions. The way I operate is if you have a question, comment, or anything, raise your hand. Don't be afraid to interrupt me. I'm always happy to address questions. Eileen, why don't you tell us a little bit about Custom Keynotes and what you can do for these fine people that are either trying to get into the government for the first time or have been working in the government for some time and want to make sure that they continue to be successful. I'll change the slides for you as we move along. Eileen?
Great. Thank you very much, Michael, for having me on this webinar. Today's goal, at least in the slides that I'm going to be covering for you, my hope for you is that the hour that you spend with us could save you almost 6 figures in pointing you in the right direction to go after opportunities with the federal government. My name is Eileen Kent. I'm with Custom Keynotes. I've been training people for the last 10 years. I've trained over 10,000 people in federal sales, proposal writing, and GSA schedule contracting. I'm known in the industry. The industry has nicknamed me the Federal Sales Sherpa. And yes, Sherpa, that person that's going to help you up that huge mountain, survive it. So Mike, you can go ahead and change the slide. And we're going to talk a little bit right now about what people need to be doing right now in order to point in the right direction to go after opportunities. One of the things that a lot of my students have come to me for, because I've been in the field selling to the federal government for many years myself, and when I first started selling to the federal government, I was literally walking the halls. So I've traveled to LA, San Francisco, Las Vegas, Atlanta, Dallas, DC, and Chicago. So I've sold in your backyards. And a lot of times my customers come to me and they say, Eileen, what would you do if you were me? And yes, I have some great advice to give you, but really what I would rather you do is look at the data. Okay? In the old days, you'd have to walk the halls and talk to people and be lied to for like a year. When I was first selling to the federal government, I literally traveled the country charging my company that I worked for, my salary, and all that travel. And now, in the days of the word transparency, I bet you've heard that in the news, transparency. Well, now when you hear that word, that's money in the bank for you as a federal contractor. Because the best thing about transparency is that the data about government contracts that have gone to your competitors, it's out there. Now, there are free websites that you can go to. The two websites that are free is usaspending.gov and Federal Procurement Data System. Those two are databases that the government has built for us to look at it. Now, have you been approached by companies like GovWin and Easy GovOps and Onvia and all these companies that want to sell you this contracting data? Well, those subscriptions can be anywhere between $2,500 and $10,000 a year to buy. And really the data's out there, but the big question is do you understand the data? And what do you do with the data? Well, one of the things that you might want to consider doing, step one, is to step back for a minute and perform what I call a competitive analysis. A competitive analysis will show you, does the government buy what I sell? Who buys what I sell? How much do they buy? Who are they buying it from now? The big question is how are they buying it? Now you hear the word contracting vehicles, which we'll be covering a lot today, but these are different types of government contracts, IDIQs, blanket purchase agreements, etc. You want to know if they're using a GSA schedule to get to you. Are they posting it at the public bid sites? Are they offering it sole source to companies because they're small business set-asides? Having a deep dive competitive analysis done for you will probably help you understand the information so that you can stay in the field selling. So GovWin and EasyGovOps, those software systems can look up that data for you, but most companies don't know what that means. So having someone who is an analyst that knows how to read that data and explain it to you is probably the best way to do it. But step one, no matter what, is to step back, ask these questions, look at the current contracts that are out there, and then consider building an action plan around the agencies that buy what you sell.
Eileen,
So, question, Mike?
Are you ready for your first question?
Sure, bring it on.
No name, because I don't usually use names. Love to do business with the government. Right now I'm a home-based wholesale baking company. I have 2 products that I would like to sell. Each time I attempt to fill out a bid for the commissaries, they don't have my items listed in the territory I desire. How can I get them to at least try my products?
Okay, that's a great question, especially for the micro small business that's out there. First of all, stop writing bids. That just saved you $10,000 in time. We need to get you in front of the commissaries in your backyard to literally taste test your product and sell in your own backyard. For example, my hometown, now I live in Chicago now, but in my hometown of St. Clair Shores, Michigan, which if you looked at your hands is at the base of the thumb just north of Detroit, there's a guy there that sells fruit to the government to his local prison. So he probably has a relationship. So the answer to your question would be, I hate to say it, but it depends. We need to take a look at who buys for the commissaries in your backyard. Maybe there's a prime that's selling. Maybe you need to sell your products to the prime, or maybe you need to go into your local commissary and let them try and help you build from there. But we need to do a competitive analysis in your backyard on how the government buys baking products. So I hate to throw the it depends punt at you, but there is an opportunity. You just need to get face-to-face with these people and let them try and taste test your product and help walk you through the process. No more bidding. No more blind bidding. We're going to take that away from you for a while. Any other questions so far?
Nope, we're rocking. Everybody wants to know if they can get the slides. Let me make it. I just sent a message to everybody. Slides will be available after the show, as well as within an hour or so. This full webcast will be available on our site for rebroadcast at marketus.com. Other than that, that's what we got so far.
Yep, and the data websites, again, are usaspending.gov and FPDS. And again, they are free websites where you can look at contract data, but it might look very confusing to someone new. It is available, but getting a little help to analyze the data for you might be something you might want to consider.
I have a question for Earl.
Yes, sir.
Gentleman asks, if I'm not a veteran, how would I get under the base?
Oh,
that's a great question.
yeah, sure. That's a good question. Generally speaking, there's one central control point as you enter the base. We have one at each of our facilities. You go into there and you'll have to get a pass. They'll do a small or a short background check on you, and after that background check's completed, they'll give you a pass that you can use either for a 6-month period, a day, well, 1 day, 30 days, 6 months, or a year pass. If you have existing business that you're doing with the government at that facility or one part of the government, you can get a sponsor to co-sign for you to have access for now it's up to 3 years. My pass for Fort Bragg, for example, is for 3 years. And each, let's see, Lejeune, my pass down there is yearly, and the other ones are yearly also. But generally speaking, you have to go to the control point. Once you get to the control point of the access, it's the main access point. You'll go inside, tell them that you want to get a pass. They'll ask you what your business is. It'll explain it to them, and it'll go from there. If you have an existing customer out there that you have a need to go out there daily, then that particular customer can sign off for you, and you can get, as I said, 1 to 3 years. So
Excellent.
Go ahead. Hey, I wanted to back up on one thing what Eileen said about the data and what the question on the grocery products. We just got our products, and I got to say that the 2 sites that Eileen had mentioned, she's absolutely. I can't say enough how important it is to have a specialist like herself to do that analysis of who the buyers are in your backyard, because data. We've gotten all that. Our company has gotten all that information, and that information is just. I mean, you really need somebody to shepherd you through the process, or you'll fall back into that old thing where you'll spend so much time, so much money wasted. We took advantage of Eileen's competitive analysis, and we took 3 stores, and instead of having to add salespersons, we designated 2 at each store with GSA type sales, and now we have a targeted sales program over for a 1-year period, and I mean it is a volume of information, too much information, unless you have somebody to help guide you through it.
Well, Earl, tell me about last year when you got your show cause letter from GSA. Without reading through it, how much did you do in sales last year on GSA?
$51 in 2-year period. I was thrown the GSA project this year, and I think, Mike, about 3 months ago, maybe not that long, but when I went online, we heard of some large business coming through the VA hospitals. So, of course, I'm very strong out at the local VA hospital in Fayetteville, North Carolina. Went out there, and we couldn't quote any of the material that they were going to need because we didn't have anything on our GSA schedule. At that point, we had 85 line items on there. Nothing had been updated in 2 years, and in fact, because of lack of sales, the letter had already been initiated where we had lost our GSA contract. It just hadn't been processed. And as it happened, since we were trying to follow up on that business, to be perfectly honest with you, I took a quick canvas. I'm the sales manager for GSA now, and before that I was the DLA government salesperson. I was an assistant to the GSA sales that we had. Our folks did not utilize folks like Market US. They didn't utilize Eileen's abilities, and so we were just dead in the water. So we didn't do any sales. So the problem became we had lost our GSA contract. We had business that was coming in. They wanted to buy from us, so I reached out. I think, Mike, wasn't it about 4 o'clock in the morning on Monday? I sent out emails. Actually,
something like that, yep.
Yeah, I sent out like 5 different emails, and Mike responded before 7 o'clock. The other 2 folks that that had responded to it later in the day, clearly they didn't have as much on the ball as he did, so I went with him. And it was blind faith at that point after I vetted him through my internet research and that sort of thing. But in any case, we turned that thing around. He got me up to 300 line items, which included the items that we needed for the VA hospital's immediate buys. We did $70,000 in the last 3 months. We've done $70,000, right at $70,000 in sales. We've got another $130,000 in sales that's coming through. We've got an additions. We've done it. We did an additional product line ad, put us up to 300 line items within what, Mike, 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Then we turned around and we now have pending, and probably will have it Wednesday next week, up to 8,000 line items. So we virtually came back from the grave. I mean,
you want to tell them about the big one?
Yeah, we've got $1.5 million. It's per year, and that is with that is 1-year contract, and then we've got 4-year option extension on it. So we're kind of heroes at our own company. I mean, And I say that, but really the truth is that it's just very satisfying to be able to do what you want to do and be able to find folks that can help you navigate through all of this. I cannot say how important it is to, you've got to have, Eileen's called a Sherpa, Mike's my mentor on being
I'm that guy.
Yeah, you're that guy. Mike's that guy. So you've got to, and for me, I'm a salesman. I'm in charge of the electrical and lighting division for our company and for the GSA sales now. But when it really comes right down to it, what I do best is sell. So, and what I've learned in 30 years in this thing is that when you find somebody or you're tasked with a problem, the best thing to do is find the experts, partner with them, and go with them. And we've done that. And actually, we've got another schedule that we'll probably go. I think we'll probably have it up by December or January, and that would have never been even considered for my company on acquiring a second schedule based on what we had done in 2 years before that. And that's only, and those were good people that were in charge of that. They just simply did not know how to navigate through this maze of everything. I mean, it's all the way from getting onto the base to finding out who's doing the purchasing, to finding out what they're buying, who your competitors are. You've really got to have somebody lead you through this thing, and that's what we're doing. So,
Here's a question for you both. I'm confused about this whole GSA thing. If I have a vendor in medical supplies now, how do I get those items on GSA?
Well, the first thing I would do is talk to somebody, an expert, to help me get a GSA schedule if the VA, my customers are telling me that they're using a GSA schedule to buy my products and services. Because in the competitive analysis, it usually uncovers whether or not your customers buy your products on GSA schedule. It will show you. And that's when you hire someone to help you fill out the paperwork. Now, I have filled out a lot of GSA schedules. My focus, like Earl, is I like to sell and I like to teach people how to sell. So I don't help people with their GSA schedules, and I don't tell people to fill out the paperwork by themselves. I usually ask an expert to do it. So I would say if you have a customer that wants to buy your medical supplies, the VA itself manages the GSA schedule. So believe me, they'll want it on the GSA schedule. So bringing someone on like Mike might make sense, and Earl can maybe talk about that too.
Yeah, the main thing, I would answer it very similarly in this way. If they're going to buy it, what Mike advised me to do was to go to my buyer after we qualified. It was a GSA purchase. You got to remember the GSA buying period was coming to a quick end. So what we had to do was we went to the buyers. I got a letter from my appropriate person at the VA hospital indicating that they wanted to buy these items from us. Mike managed me through the additions process to get it added to my GSA schedule. My GSA officer reviewed the letter, and it went from the bottom of the stack to the top of the stack, and we got processed that first set within 2 weeks. And that's how you got to do it. You've got to have somebody like Mike to help you. First, you got to qualify that it's going to be bought. Mike would then tell you, he'd give, as he looked it over, I'm sure he'd come back with the same answer he did with me. Get your letter of demand, if you will, from your qualified GSA buyer, and we'll put it in with your package. We'll send it up, and you'll go from the bottom to the top. And that's exactly what Terrence, our CO at GSA, said for us to do, and boom, we were there. I couldn't believe it.
I just want to back that up real quick. If we were to explain to you right now what it would take to get a GSA schedule, that would be an 8-hour class. So
well, we're going to do that. We're going to do that in 45. Eileen, we're going to do that in 45 minutes as soon as we get through your part.
Some of that coming up. So I just want to say, hang in there. There's more.
We have a question for Eileen, and I know you're going to answer it somewhere along the line. It's your choice. How much does a competitive analysis usually cost? You can answer it now or whenever you feel like it.
Oh, great. Well, there's, I think that what we'd like to do is let me go through the next couple of steps, and then I'll give you a price, because a competitive analysis doesn't mean anything unless you have, let's move on to the next slide.
Okay, we're moving.
Unless you get some training. You need to learn how to sell. You're going to get a competitive analysis. You also need to learn how to sell to the federal government. You need to know what to say, what that information means. So besides having a competitive analysis, you need to know what to do with the intel, and you need to know what to say in the field, how to approach your customers, what layers of customers you have, and who they are. Maybe your customers are just the contracting officers, but I would say 90% of the time your customers are usually the end users on the inside, the facility managers, the HR directors, the IT directors. What do you say to them, and how do you sell to them? And I do want to arm you right now with a FAR rule that you need to know to make you brave. FAR Rule 15.201. If you look it up on Google, it basically tells the government that early engagements to talk to the industry about a new product or service is encouraged. It's encouraged. So if you believe that you're not allowed to talk to your customers, that's not true. That's false. Now you might have one customer that says, the government says you're not allowed to talk to me. Well, I just want to share with you another little phrase. Whenever your customers on the inside of the government uses the word the government, they're basically saying I. So take some of that with a grain of salt, because you could probably move on to the next person and they'll be happy to talk to you. So with that, not only do you need a competitive analysis, you need some real field training, not just some company that sells training out there that's never been in the field. I got to tell you again, some of these big boys that are out there that are selling you this competitive analysis data, they have college kids putting that competitive analysis data in there, not people that have been in the field, walking the halls, talking the talk. You need someone that knows what it's like to be you, calling on the government, peeking over their shoulders and looking at their files. I just wanted to say step 2 is you need to learn the game. Earl, do you have anything to throw in on that? Getting training?
I agree with everything on that. That's one of the key areas. You can throw people out there in the field, and if you don't have a targeted analysis of who they are, you know, Eileen, like the VA hospital in our particular area, we had. I'm an old school salesman, and I've been calling on 2. And after the analysis, we find out there's 10 folks. Then we find out there's multiple layers within the same hospital institution that I hadn't even called on. How do I put my salesmen to work? I see on the bottom here it says, who has the field experience to train your team one-on-one? You really, I mean, the competitive analysis answers that question by the people. I mean, it is so detailed. And again, I took internal employees that we have and now have tasked them with the Excel spreadsheet that Eileen had provided for us on particular areas, 2 people at each branch to call on the targeted areas, and we're on a drive. I mean, we're attacking, and it's working quite well. You have to be motivated, but you got to use the assets.
Great. So we can move on to number 3.
We're going to the step 3.
Step 3.
We're there.
Step 3 is you need, so competitive analysis, train the team, and if you're the only person at your company, you need training. And there is training out there, but there's also one-on-one training based on the analysis that was out there. Then you need a federal sales action plan. So what would this federal sales action plan be? Probably wrapped around 1 or 2 agencies that buy what you sell in your backyard. So one of the things I wanted to just say about that is building a federal sales action plan. There are companies out there, just saying, there's companies out there that offer their salespeople to you or their experts to you to sell on your behalf. And I am very passionate about you selling for yourself and hiring team members that work for you to to sell for you. And here's why. You have an outside company selling on your behalf. They're probably carrying many other companies' business cards. So they're not just selling for you. They're selling for a lot of people. Or they come to you and they say, I have multiple contacts in the federal government. Let me get you in there. Well, yeah, that person might have worked for the Air Force. But let's say your product is for the Navy. So who cares? The guy at the Air Force doesn't know anybody at the Navy. So my thing to you is you need to look at the data, empower yourself and your own team to build an action plan to execute yourself. And those 3 steps are the steps that I do for people. And then there are other steps that we're going to talk about today that you're going to need to do down the road. But you will need to have someone like Earl leading the charge. If you don't have someone ready to execute, what's the point? That's one of the things I've got to underline with you, is that if you're not willing to hit the field and make calls and sell to the feds and develop relationships, then there's no point to go after that. If you're going to sit in your office and respond to bids, you're going to lose and lose and lose. You need to have a sales team or a person, even if it's just 1 hour a day. The 3 steps that I'm talking about won't make any difference if you don't execute. It's like being a workout coach. If I give you a workout plan and you don't actually do the exercises, you expect somebody else to do the exercises for you, you're going to end up with 0 sales for 2 or 3 years, sitting there with $51 on your schedule. So with that in mind, those 3 steps that I offer companies, again, my hope is to get you standing up quickly, help train your team to execute. I work one-on-one with companies. I only take on about 6 companies a month for these 3 steps. When you sit with me, it's going to be for 2.5 hours training, teleseminars, but I'm preparing all this data for you. I'm booking people right now for late November, December, and January. I charge $2,500 for these 3 steps. I built this program for the little guy. So let's move on to how do I find a legitimate GSA schedule consultant? Let's move on to the next slide.
Hey,
because if
Eileen,
you need a GSA schedule, you need a sales plan. And again, this slide
Eileen?
covers some of the plan. Earl?
Yeah, and that's $2,500 total, right?
With me, Eileen Kent, not for a GSA schedule, for the 3 steps. It's $2,500.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, yeah, total, and I wanted to just say that we took advantage of that, and that's what got our program standing up, and that's why we're moving forward on I mean, it's basically, she's provided a sea of opportunities for us, but, you know, I'd encourage everyone to take advantage of that.
Thank you.
I think you're lost if you don't.
So if you build a custom federal sales action plan, my goal for you, whether you do it yourself or you hire someone like me, is you need to build a way to track your leads. A lot of times your salespeople are out there and they're putting into your CRM system, you know, met with client, left a message. They're leaving nothing in there. And this action plan helps you push to your sales team a way to track leads and see the layers that you're missing, because that's the issue. It's not what you do know, it's the stuff that you don't know, and that's when you lose. So step 4 is we talk about the paperwork. You guys are probably all in SAM, and a lot of you have your certifications. Certifications help you close deals as set-asides. Having a GSA schedule we'll talk about in a minute, but 3 other things you need to get ready paperwork-wise is building a capability statement, which is a 2-page document that includes all of your critical information. Your SAM registration, your DUNS number, your North American classification codes, your capabilities, your best values. Those things need to be something that you can quickly email when a customer asks you, do you have your CAPES line card, do you have your CAPES statement, it's a quick sales document. And I would say if you have a website, make sure that you have a link to the PDF that they can quickly download. And also you need to have a strong government website presence. You need to build a couple pages into your website that show the past performance you've done and things that you're capable of doing. And I know that Earl's been working on that as well right now. Any thoughts about those CAPES, past performance and website, Earl?
Yes, we did take advantage of that. Again, you recommended it. I asked you who you would recommend. We fielded a couple folks. We had fired our internal IT web manager. We selected one. We do now have a updated website that has a GSA and an electrical tab on it. It's got our capability statement on that GSA tab, and it's got all of on our electrical tab. It's got icons for the manufacturers we represent with links to the home pages for each of those manufacturers so that a customer can quickly go through it. So it's got our GSA schedule right there on the front page of it, our schedule number or contract number, and it's great. Hey, I see one question on here. It says this explanation is confusing. What happened to raise his lines from 70 to thousands? What happened was we followed Eileen's analysis. I went back to my backyard customers, the VA hospital in Fort Bragg, and found out that, let's see, Cooper wiring devices, SIM-car LED fixtures, these were lines that they were buying heavily through GSA. I had originally told Mike that by the end of the year we wanted to be up to about 1,000 line items, but I found out after the analysis told me who to go talk to, I went and talked to those folks, and they said, yeah, we're using a lot of Cooper wiring devices. You get it up on your schedule, and we'll buy it. So instead of just adding, the top sellers, I moved over to the highest movers within my customer base, and it became necessary to go from our current, as I said, I originally was only going to go from 300 to 1,000, and Mike will walk you through that process. But when you're doing an additions with spreadsheet technology, it's not a big lift to get the full breadth of the line that your customers want. You can just throw a bunch of stuff up there and it's not going to go anywhere. So you want to use the analysis to find out what they're using, and then that will dictate how many lines of a particular manufacturer you're going to put up on your website. For us, in wiring devices and lighting, it was somewhat large for the Buy American compliant items in lighting, LED, and wiring devices, and that's why we had to go up to 8,000 line items. It's 8,300 or 8,500 items.
And I think in a couple of weeks we got another 5 that we're going to add, which will kick us to about 1,500. So we got you by the end of the year. I want to address a question that Joan asked us, and I will pause for laughter from both Earl and Eileen. And it's not, we're not laughing at you, Joan. She says, I saw that only about 10% of the federal sales go through GSA on the GSA Gov website. Why is it so important to get a schedule if most of the money isn't going through the program? Well, I'm going to take a first pass at the answer. Number one, the standard form 295, which is where the government buyers have to report their sales to the government's websites, and nothing that's under 25,000 needs to be reported, and there's a tremendous amount that is done under 25,000. But I'm going to defer over to Eileen first as to why a schedule is so important. And for the record, in the background, I've been negotiating schedules since 1986, and that's all we've done since 1986, when I signed my first client, a little guy in Austin you've never heard of, Dell Computer. And yes, he does open market. He does a bunch of other big stuff. But for the quick and dirty, I need it yesterday, they usually will go to a GSA. Eileen?
Well, again, it depends. You're right. 10% of buys go through the GSA schedule. And that's why having a competitive analysis makes sense, so we can see if your buyers in your backyard or in your expertise, buy what you sell on GSA schedule. So for example, I have a lady in Illinois who sells HVAC services in Illinois. She was told by her project manager at GSA's Public Building Services, I buy everything on GSA schedule. So she went out and got herself a schedule, and then she sat and waited for the orders, and nothing happened. She asked me to do a competitive analysis, and in her case, ladies and gentlemen, just her case, GSA was not even using the facility's GSA schedule to buy what she sold. They just used that as a pushback to make her go away. However, now with the competitive analysis, she's approaching her customers saying, I know that you might use an IDIQ, a different type of contract vehicle, to buy what I offer, but did you know that I sell on GSA schedule and all you need are a couple bids to work with me? In Earl's backyard, not a lot of their customers were buying what he sold on GSA schedule. Now Earl has to be an evangelist. He evangelizes his GSA schedule, explaining and teaching their customers how to buy using a GSA schedule, and now their customers are kissing his feet because he's making it easy for them to buy what he sells. So 10% out of 500 billion, okay, $39 billion, $39 billion is being sold on GSA schedule. The real question is do people buy what I sell on GSA schedule in my backyard? And if they do, having a GSA schedule is an imperative. So for Earl's situation with electrical supplies, etc., and services, he's able to sell directly to the government, sole source, under $25,000, but usually they get 3 bids. But he's also able to close deals. GSA schedules is a closing mechanism. Earl's customer told him what they buy on schedule. That relationship caused him to add the items to his schedule. Mike made it easy to put it on schedule. So this is customer driven, ladies and gentlemen. You need to develop a relationship with your customers, knowing how they perform, and then you decide whether or not you need a schedule at that point. If you're in construction, I can tell you right now, GSA schedules, there's only one little sin for GSA schedules called construction management. Otherwise, architectural things are not on schedule. So building a building is not on GSA schedule. So those are $100 million projects. But if you're selling doors and windows, etc., those are on schedule. Managing a facility, that's on GSA schedule. But we got to look at who buys in your backyard first so you can confidently decide whether or not you need a schedule to close business. But like what Mike said, GSA schedules are a feather in your cap. It shows that you're a capable vendor, able to close business quickly and easily. Now, if they actually use a schedule is what you find out in the field, but having one makes their job easier to work with you. And we'll delve further into that soon. I hope I helped explain a little bit about that. Okay, learning how to bid is a major important step, because if you have a GSA schedule or not, you're going to have to write and respond to requests for quotes or requests for proposals. And now this second point, having a strong bid, no bid process. Many companies get suckered into responding to bids on FedBizOps. And now what I want to do is save you a lot of time and effort. You need to develop at your company a bid, no bid process. And it's a list of questions. Do I know the customer? Does the customer know me? Did they ask for my product, or am I the equivalent? Do I know the incumbent? Have I bid before? Is this a set-aside that meets my business? So building a strong bid, no bid process and being strong enough to walk away and not bid on a loser. That will save you a lot of time and effort, because we want you focused on getting in front of customers before that bid hits the streets. Also having a strong proposal library at your company to turn these proposals around quickly, and being able to follow up with your customers with a strong debriefing so you can turn a loss into a conversation about next time. So these are things that are very important you need to learn how to do, and that could come with you and save you time and money down the road. So we can move on to the next slide. You guys will learn how to get to know me. Any questions so far regarding competitive analysis, training, action plan, knowing how to bid? Because now I'd like to pass it to Mike and let him share with you a little bit more about his expertise and GSA schedules. Mike?
Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. And I usually start all of our webcasts with this slide and the next slide. And I didn't do it today because I wanted to get Eileen in because it's very important. I wanted you to hear from an actual customer who was on death row, and we got the governor to give him a reprieve. That's about the funniest way I can say it. What gives us the right to be sitting here today imparting all this information on you? And by the way, the questions that we have gotten, I've never seen before. They are fantastic. Got my first question. How do we get past the CO to the actual buyer? Eileen will help you do that. She'll show you exactly what desk to call of the people that are actually using and buying what you sell. Like I said before, I've been doing this over 28 years, and sales department uses the term almost 3 decades, which makes me feel even older than I really am, but it's the truth. In the very early years, we helped GSA develop e-offer, and I can confidently say I did not work on e-buy because I don't like it, but that's beside the point. And I've actually done something that most people in this business have never done. That is actually sold to the government. So has Eileen. We've done it both ways, with and without a contract. Guess which way is easier? With. The question came up before, well, if only 10% of the sales are through GSA, there's a lot more than what you see on the reports. Most of the time, once you have got a GSA contract, once you have been trained by Eileen, once you've been counseled by me and Eileen, and hopefully blow up Earl's phone and call him, what you'll find is that you are smarter than the government buyer. The government buyer only understands a 3-letter word which is taboo in my vocabulary: bid. Don't confuse, and we're going to show you very quickly the difference between the bidding that Eileen's talking about and the bidding that Eileen didn't mention. But what's in this for you? A good friend of mine that created Home Shopping Network, Bob Shircosta, said he calls it WIFM. What's in it for me? And that's the question you're asking us, is what's in this for you? Well, have you gotten the knowledge that you came here to get today so far? We're not done with you yet. Have you gotten straight answers? Absolutely. Have you gotten the absolute truth? I guarantee it. Let's talk about some of the acronyms out of Washington. A bid is a response to a request for proposal. Generally runs about 250 plus pages to respond. An RFQ, request for quote, is a lot of times what you're going to get from a buyer trying to use GSA. You hardly ever see IFBs and RFIs anymore, so don't worry about those. But the difference between a bid and an RFQ, they call it a bid. What can you do for my agency? I'm getting ready to spend $500,000 on widgets, and I've got 14 vendors that can provide them to me on GSA. Why are you different? What value do you bring to me as a buyer? What value do you bring to my user? So there's the difference. Yes, you will have to do some paperwork. Earl can attest to that because he's had to do quite a bit, and quite frankly, that $1.5 million order, he lost on a quote, bid quote, if you will. We put our heads together and we agreed on how we were going to approach the buyer and got it turned around so it's coming to him. Now I'm seeing a question that just came up. You mentioned that buys under 25K are not reported. Does that mean that sales under 25 can be sole sourced? Absolutely not. It's illegal. What happens is, and we're going to see this in the next couple of slides here, where you're going to learn about the Competition and Contracting Act. You're going to learn about what's called the Small Business Purchase Threshold. And what is a micro purchase? Orders under $3,000, they can just give you a credit card and buy it, usually made with what they call the Smart Pay card, which is the government's charge card. They don't have credit cards, they have charge cards. If Earl is sitting there getting two $3,000 orders a week, after about a month, he's going to get cut off. Why? Multiple orders violate the Competition and Contracting Act, which states in the FAR, Federal Acquisition Regulation, that you must combine your requirements and not fragment them to get around, circumvent the regulations. Here's the myth and reality. Yep, you could probably survive for a while, but eventually the agency that's making all these $3,000 purchases is going to get audited internally. They're going to tell them, and I can give you a whole list of customers who have had this same problem, is I got a call the other day and they said I can't buy from you anymore because I don't have a contract. So let's get you a contract. Get a contract and eliminate the pain. The beauty of a contract, for those of you that heavily inquired about it today, is that once you have, if you win a bid, you get a contract. Well, if you already have a contract, again, understanding the difference between a full request for proposal and a scheduled bid quote, big difference. You're getting an order. You're not going out and redoing all the negotiation, which could last 8, 10, 12 months, assuming nobody protests it after you get it awarded. If Eileen is working for Department of Homeland Security and gives Earl an order, nobody can protest that. It's a done deal because he has a valid contract. What is a schedule? It's a prime contracting vehicle. That's the easiest way to describe it. You become a prime contractor with the government. I'm trying to get caught up here. Here we go. Why do government agencies like buying schedules? Eileen, didn't you say there was somebody that said she only preferred to use GSA? Why is that?
Yes, in some cases with your customers, you need to listen to your customers, but there is a FAR Rule 8.4 that you need to memorize.
An order placed against a GSA contract is considered to be placed in full and open competition. Unfortunately, I took that slide out.
But can I cover that real quick? That FAR Rule 8.4, because it's magic. FAR Rule 8.4 basically says, now you've got, usually when you go out, if it's over $25,000, it used to have to go out on FedBizOps, which can take up to 269 days. Very painful. But if it's through the GSA schedule, if it's under $25,000, they can go to GSA Advantage, click and buy your products. If it's under $25,000 and it's a service, they need to review the price lists of 2 others and then move forward with you. But if it's over $25,000, now remember, FedBizOps, which takes 269 days, if it's over $25,000 and they use a GSA schedule to buy from you, all they need to do is get 3 requests for quotes, that smaller, shorter bid process. 3 requests for quotes, knocking down the time it takes for them to buy from you from 269 days on average at FedBizOps to 14 days on average. Sometimes it can be overnight. But just saying that FAR Rule 8.4 is the greatest rule for GSA schedule holders. It avoids the public bid process. But yet they might still need to get 2 other quotes. I'm just preparing you for that. Not bids, the whole bid process, the shorter quotes, RFQs, 3 of them if it's over 25 grand.
Thank you. Minimum sales under your contract. You guys remember a guy named Earl in the beginning of the show who did $51 in 2 years? Well, this is the reason why. You're required to have a minimum of $25,000 your first 2 years and $25,000 every year thereafter. So relatively speaking, in 5 years, after you get your $25,000, you only need to do $100,000, which means your program is not successful. The industrial funding fee that everybody hates gets added to your final rates. Economic price adjustments, yes, you can raise prices, and yes, you can do spot price reductions without affecting your contract price. Here's how you prevent your cancellation. Where do you start? I promise you, everybody, we're getting close to the end. How long you been in business? Remember that question before? Let's get a little audience participation here. Is it 3 years, 2 years, or 1 year you have to be in business? Let me know on your question panel. Just type yes, 1, 2, or 3, and we'll take a look at them. Boy, they're just coming and flying in. I got a lot of right answers. I got a surprise answer for you. Depends on the contracting officer and GSA Finance. There is no regulation, there's no rule, there's no memo, there's no presidential order, there's nothing that says you have to be in business 2 years. However, GSA Finance says we would like to see 2 years of financial stability. Well, how do I do that? I just incorporated 6 months ago to answer the gentleman's question earlier, said I'm a brand new business. And I kind of gave him a private answer, but I'm telling the world right now. You've only been incorporated for 6 months, but you've been doing what you've been doing for 15 years. How do you get around it? How do you legally comply with that requirement? Here's the answer. And it works because I found it out by accident 4 years ago when I had a guy that had been doing consulting as a sole proprietor for 24 years. His accountant and attorney told him to incorporate for image and protection. GSA denied him. I had him do the write-up. Bang, contract. That's how you do it. So those of you that are on that borderline, if you're a year and 9 months, 10 months, 8 months, you can start. Because by the time GSA awards you, you will have been in business 2 years as a company. But let's get the write-up just to back it up to be sure. Negotiations, I'm not going to go into this right now. The operative term is most favored customer. Make GSA your most favored customer, and your contract award process will go a lot faster. I did get a question from a gentleman that said, well, we're about a week away from getting our award. Well, whoever told you that, sir, is lying to you. And I responded and said, how long have you been waiting? I didn't get the answer. You'll know when GSA is ready to award. You'll get a final proposal revision letter. When you submit that FPR back to your contracting officer within a matter of days, usually 2 or 3, you'll have your number. You'll have your contract. You'll also get an email that says log into eOffer and sign the offer. As soon as you sign it, I send an email to the CO so she knows to look in her panel, and usually within a matter of hours, she signs it. Guess what? I'm free to roam about the country. You can do this. That's what you're telling me. I can do this. Ladies and gentlemen, answer the questions. What's your time worth? How much do you bill an hour? While you're fooling around spending almost 100 hours with GSA, not counting the time that is very well spent with Eileen, just dealing with GSA, you're going to spend about 100 hours. We do. You're going to be pulled in quite a bit. The good news is I actually come to your office and sit down, and in one day we knock out all the paperwork. Nobody else does that. That way you get to see, here's the guy that was talking to me on the webinar. Yeah, he's got a cool picture, big deal. But, ooh, the picture matches the guy sitting in front of me who flew into town. I just got back from Albany, Georgia. I also got back, I had to go up to Jacksonville for a day. Thank you, Diane. And moving right on. The bottom one is the most important. Do you plan on selling your business sometime in the near future? And if you have a GSA contract, it's worth more because you have a revenue stream. GSA is 5 years plus 3 5-year extensions.
Can I just say something really quick? I know that there's time is of the essence. I have filled out GSA schedule contracts. I've helped people with it, and I wouldn't fill it out for myself. Just saying.
Well, that's why I asked the question, do you do your own taxes? Get audited 3 years in a row, and it'll make you a believer that I should never touch a tax return again, ever, and I never will. Helen asked the question, does a competitive analysis tell us what our competitors are charging? Before Eileen answers that, first of all, Helen, you are not competing with anybody but yourself, how you do business commercially. Having said that, there is what's called a competitive range on GSA. Best thing you can do is go to gsaadvantage.gov, gsaadvantage.gov, query what you do and see what other people are charging. If you're charging $500 an hour and somebody else has got the same for service, somebody else has got the exact same service with education and functional requirements and everything else, and they're charging $250, you got a problem. Why are you charging so much? Are you that good? If you're that good, then your education and experience should be a lot different than the one charging $250. I just went through this. We had to make some price adjustments. We actually had a couple categories that didn't make it on because somebody was on Advantage and they didn't have any requirements or education. And of course, again, you're smarter than the GSA buyer, the CO, and she says, well, they got a cheaper price. What are they giving you, a high schooler, or are they giving you a college graduate? Eileen, the competitive analysis will tell them not necessarily what they're charging, but GSA Advantage will answer that question for them. Over 85% of all of you who try to submit on your own will be rejected. That's not bad. That's not saying go away, don't come back. What it's saying is if GSA has a gatekeeper, they're called an SME, subject matter expert. Their job is to not let you through the gate unless everything is absolutely perfect the way that person understands it. And yes, I've had many, many, many offers rejected. I had one customer who just refused to do it the way I asked him to do it. 5 rejections, 1 award. If that's what you want, that's what I'll put in. And it got rejected. We just resubmit, and got it done. Those, think of it as for sale by owner on your house, as opposed to using a realtor or broker. 90% of those people who came to us got approved. Why didn't the others? Well, let's read the red first, poor credit, which means your financial stability in your company. Remember the 2-year business thing that they're looking for? Maybe you had a little change in your financial status, failed to negotiate in good faith. We don't discount to anybody. Why should we give the government a discount? Because they're giving you a 5-year contract. You're not competing for it. They're giving it to you with 3 5-year extensions. Missed deadlines, if GSA tells me they want your response in 5 days and you get it to me in 6, you're out. Have you ever had a contract canceled for, I'll wait for Earl to laugh. Have you ever had a contract canceled for lack of sales? We've got to come up with a marketing plan at that point to be able to prove to the government, and Earl's laughing, to be able to prove to the government that we've corrected that issue. So those are your statistics. You like a graphic? I'll give you a graphic. How many of you do subcontracting? You don't have to respond. Just in your head, you're going, yeah, yeah, yeah. Don't do it. Why? I used to have a woman working for me that was in between jobs. She wasn't unemployed. She was in between jobs. She worked for a manufacturer who refused to get a contract. We'll just go on XYZ's contract. XYZ charged her 30% to put her on their contract. At $100,000 in sales, which is, let's say, over 5 years, $100,000 or a year, I don't care, or a day, pick it. You just gave away $30,000. That's profit. Part of those can pay to have your contract and have Eileen in your corner, and you still have profit left over. The problem is when you finally go to get your GSA contract after being a subcontractor, guess what's going to happen? Your new price to GSA is 70% of your list price because the lowest price you charge was $70 on a $100 item. Don't do it if at all possible. Something that warms Eileen's heart tremendously is the proverbial blanket purchase agreement, which you must have a GSA contract to get a blanket purchase agreement. It's part of GSA. This question and answer session right here, these next 2 slides, 3 or 4 slides, are all directly from the GSA website, frequently asked questions. The BPA will follow if the contract is extended.
BPA has money behind it too, which is awesome.
It's a commitment, something that most bachelors don't understand, a commitment. Sorry, Earl.
I hear you. We currently have 4 BPAs. We've got 4 BPAs now. So
let's
like
talk
a bucket
about
of money they keep refilling.
Oh man, it's
Yep.
beautiful. It's a beautiful vehicle. And
Yeah,
I
they're
would
hitting-
like to add too, those questions, if you want to do it the wrong way, those are the questions I have been through, and you know, like I said, I've been in it over 30 years, but we've been through almost every one of those scenarios of trying to do it yourself, not having a market analysis, and those are really the wrong ways to do it. I went to my boss for the cost of acquiring a new schedule, and his only question to me was, have you vetted your source? And I said, yes, and he said, do it. And we've been off and running ever since then. And also those small purchases, I know I'm backtracking, but those small purchases that they were talking about, since we published, and that's 300 lines or right at 300 lines, we've gotten $11,000 in small overnight buys right off the GSA Advantage site. One of them was for $8,000, and the rest of them were for incremental amounts of $200, $300. I mean, they just, and the thing is, though, is populate it with what your customers or your line of, your market, your commodity, populate it with what's going to sell. Find out what they're buying and populate it with that, and you'll do well.
And get a letter.
One thing I want to just say, though, is if you get your schedule, don't sit and wait for the orders to happen. So
No,
always
they're gonna happen.
remember, you have to draw the business in.
Yep, you got to go after it.
Anybody a fisherman? When you go out on the lake, you're sitting out there saying, I'm fishing. You got to drop the lure in the water. You got to do it. You got to attract the customer. Somebody asked, is the VA schedule the same as the GSA?
Yes.
Excellent question. Yes and no. It's vetted through GSA, but it's administered and awarded through VA with a GSA number. Does that confuse anybody? There are 65, the 65 category, and that is all VA, but it's run through the GSA system.
Hey, I'd like to add something to that. I'm going to have to lean on Eileen and Mike for the answer, but for me at the at the VA hospitals, and I think it's the same at all the entities that we go to, like we do credit card purchases with the DPWs and the different folks out at Bragg and the different bases, and we're growing that business, and that's those $3,000 or less buys, but there's a different bucket of money. There's a different bucket, there's a different vehicle to buy, and sometimes we have to educate our customers at those particular bases that we're going to populate it with what they're using based on what our analysis has told us, and steer them towards that GSA money to use. Now, the VA hospital came to us and said, we're closing out the end of the year. We've got $350,000 to buy. Let's do a quick inventory of what you've been selling us. You get it on your schedule, and we'll buy it from you. Those guys were loyal, and they followed us through it. But they're the ones who actually stimulated our company to revitalize our GSA project and open up the door for more sales as we move along.
Excellent.
I also wanted to quickly say that the Air Force just recently signed a deal with GSA, so if you're going to be selling to the Air Force, they're going to be emphasizing GSA scheduled purchasing as well in the coming years.
Joan just shot in a comment and said, price negotiations with GSA was vicious. It shouldn't have been. Joan, she's not laughing at you. It's the same question we get all the
My
time.
heart is going to you so much.
Sorry, lady.
Oh, it is the hardest thing.
Unless you know more than they do.
Yeah, unless you have Mike.
Because chances are, I already know what they're going to ask before they even ask it. Another question was in, by the way, folks, we only have 2 slides left. The question was asked, for a new business, do I have any suggestions on how to establish good credit? You already have good credit. Just because your business is profitable and you only pay cash for everything, all right, everyone get your calculators out. Here's how you determine if you have good credit with GSA. This is what's called a qualification. You can go on our site halfway down on the left that says, do I qualify for a GSA? Very simple. Take your, let's use 2013 or year to date, your choice, doesn't matter. Take your total assets, income, everything, divide that into your total liabilities. So if you did $1 million and your liabilities were $650,000, you'll have about a 1.5, what's called quick ratio. Ask your accountant, he can get it for you in no time at all. If you have a financial quick ratio of 1.5 or higher, you qualify. Joan says, do we have to pay for D&B? There's two different D&Bs. There's what I call the bogus scam D&B done in Bradstreet. Then there's the requirement for a GSA contract called open ratings. That is required, and I believe they've jacked the price up to $195. While I'm explaining this to you, I want you to think eBay feedback. They're going to survey 5 to 10 or so of your customers on an online web survey, rating you 1 to 10 on, you know, how responsive were you, quality of work, blah, blah, blah. That will generate a report. That has to be submitted with your GSA application, which leads me to the next slide, and we are almost out of here. After everything you've heard, we already know what Eileen charges. Just, if you would, those of you that aren't asleep yet, and I apologize if you've gotten bored anywhere along the line, but we try to make it as fun as possible. What do you think? And don't go by all the robocalls and all the other stuff you're getting offering to pay you to do your contract. As you can see, the information you're getting here is worth a lot of money, but I haven't shared all the secrets with you on how to protect your pricing and profitability, because that's all part of what we do, and it's part of our proprietary technology. What is it worth to get a GSA contract? Now, I already told you about if you're doing a subcontract, you do $100,000, it costs you $30,000 to do it. Would half of that be fair to have somebody on your side for a year to provide the kind of service that Earl's gotten and give you the kind of introduction that we've given you to Eileen? You'll pay Eileen separately. And quite frankly, I don't think she charges enough based on what I've seen with the other folks that are out there supposedly or purportedly doing what she does. Is a schedule worth $15,000? What's my BBB rating? Look at Market US and click on the A+, that'll tell you. Aha, Eileen, we missed a very, very important question, my dear. What's the order of services? Should we go to Eileen first or go to you first? Well, here's the way I suggest it. Come to us first. Let's get the business aspects out of the way. Let's get your homework started. Let's get your application started. Right now, depending upon where you go in for a schedule, it could be anywhere from a year on down to about 30 days for award. During that time, Eileen will have you finished in 30 days. While you're waiting for your award, follow what Eileen says as though it was your Bible. Make sense? All right, I'm not going to mention this person's name, and I'm hoping that the question was a joke. Where do we get the forms from? I'll let Eileen answer that.
The forms for what? It's the big question.
GSA.
Well, you can go to the GSA website and stumble around there. Look up what you offer through eLibrary and click on the schedule that meets yours and click on for vendors only. But I would once again suggest you work and talk to Mike beforehand before you kill yourself.
I'd like to add, please don't do that. I did that. Our company did that. We sat there with a GSA unpopulated, no direction for 2 years. We fell to $51 in sales, folks. And that was over a 2-year period. I was hesitant, to be honest with you, about spending that large amount of money initially for a schedule. My boss, who has a wider or better view than I do, he jumped right directly on it. If our sources or if our two folks were vetted, we jumped on it, and that is the easiest, most painless way to go, and it'll be done right, and you'll get where you need to be in a relatively, in the quickest manner and most efficient manner, and you'll have a direction when it's after you've gotten your schedule. That's why we're adding line items and increasing our sales at the rate that we're doing it. Or you can stumble around, like they said, but please, I really would not do that. I would not. I would go with these folks and follow up on it. You'll take control of your own destination.
I wanted to quickly cover that price too. I know a lot of people in the business offering GSA schedule consulting services. You got to remember, Mike is one of the first originals that helped people like Dell Computers get their schedule. So Mike is as good as anybody in the country. So I just want to say that because I've been doing this a long time and I know everybody in the business.
Well, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we're done. There's the contact info for us, of course, and Eileen and Earl. Sorry, Earl, I had to put the number up there. And we thank you for your time today.